And I'm sure you're all well aware of what that intro music means and what it brings. It means a new episode of the Young Dad Podcast is about to hit your earphones, earballs. So wherever you're at, whatever you're doing, whether you're outside mowing the lawn, changing dirty diapers, or maybe you're inside chasing those little rascals around, or maybe in the off chance you're just maybe got a moment to sit back, relax, and listen to your favorite podcast. Whatever you're doing, wherever you're at, thanks for tuning in. I'm your host Jay, and I'm super excited to be with you. Today's going to be a great episode. We're going to dive into stories of transformation, resilience, and real world wisdom. Today, we have a truly remarkable guest whose journey spans from the high stakes around the Miami's, or spans from the high stakes world of Miami's cocaine cowboy era. That's just a mouthful. High stakes world, Miami's cocaine cowboy era, but that's fine. As a mob lawyer to becoming a mindfulness mentor, educator, and author. At 74, Bob has seen it all. Literally, if you're any part of the world of Miami cocaine cowboy era, you've seen it all. Law, life, and the profound impact of mindfulness. So, what a journey we're going to get into today with Bob. Bob is now a professor of wellness and mindfulness coordinator at Elon University, bringing Taoist wisdom, brain science, and psychology into practical lessons for living a meaningful life. Whether you're a dad trying to juggle work, family, and self care, or someone seeking clarity and purpose, Bob's insights are sure to resonate. So, without further ado, Bob, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me, and thanks for creating this platform. It's a wonderful thing to be able to be on a podcast and have conversations with folks like you.
Of course. Well, I appreciate that. That always means a lot to get those compliments, and I do really appreciate them. I don't take this platform for granted. It's definitely an opportunity, right? Because we all have a voice. We all, and some of us are blessed with gifts. I've always been blessed with the gift to talk and to yap. And so I figured what better way to talk and to yap and to get some self vindication than to start a podcast. So I've been content creating for, I think, this podcast is entering into its third year. It's in its third year life. And overall, just me doing podcasting content, I think I've been doing it 3, 4 years in total. So I just love doing it. I just love doing it. I love being able to have platforms where I get to talk to really unique people, like yourself, hear new stories and share those stories and be able to relate them back to dads and whatnot and to just individuals. So it's a really great opportunity, and I love it. Uh, and the connections along the way, right? The stories along the way. It's like I'm having a mini adventure every time I get behind the microphone with someone new, and it's really exciting. So, Bob, but your journey from a mob lawyer in Miami to a mindfulness mentor, what the heck? Can you? Those are two opposite ends of the spectrum, if I ever heard it, right? And these are always my favorite stories. So, can you share a little bit about what led you from such a dramatic transformation and how you found your way from being a mob lawyer to mindfulness and meditation?
Well, yeah, it sounds like it's a really unusual story. But, in many ways, it's really just the same common story that so many of us have, in that there comes a time in your life when it's just not working. It might be your professional life, it might be your personal life, it might be both, but something's just not working, and you need to either get some kind of new approach, because if what you how's that old expression go? If you always do what you always did, you'll always get what you always got. And there just comes to be a time when you got to do something new, and sometimes it's self-generated, and sometimes you reach out and you ask for help. And in my case, I was seeing a therapist. And like I say, it was Miami. I was a mob lawyer. I was dealing with some pretty wild folks. I was engaged in some pretty excessive behaviors. Things at home weren't going too well. I had a young daughter who was beginning to show anorexic traits. I had a wife that was drinking too much alcohol, and a son who was feeling lost from everybody else grabbing the attention, me getting, tied up in my work and becoming a workaholic, not to mention the drugs. So I'm seeing a therapist, and I came to a really, look, Jay, I was making a lot of money. I was well respected in my profession. I mean, I would say that most of the folks in the legal world of Miami would have known my name. Judges all knew who I was. They all respected me. But my personal life was falling apart. And as fast as I was making the money, I was spending it. I was investing this, investing that. There came a time, by the time I was 32, I'd already paid my house off. So it gives you an idea of, you know,
How old were you when you purchased the house?
well, that would be 27.
Wow, okay. So you were making money, money. Okay,
I was making money, money.
yeah. Drug money, nonetheless, but money.
Yeah, yeah. And so I came to a point where I might have had to refinance the house. I asked my therapist, should I do this? And rather than, give me some therapeutic response like, well, Bob, what do you think you should do? He actually picked up some coins and started throwing the coins on the table. And I'm thinking, what's going on here? And who is this guy? And I hired a therapist, not a soothsayer. And he's just throwing coins on the table and looking at them and adding things up and making mathematical computations and drawing lines on a paper. Finally, he takes 6 lines and he looks them up in a chart, and it says, read chapter 32. And he opens it up to chapter 32. He shows me the book and it says retreat. And I curse him out. And I said, this is not what I paid you for. This is BS. And I stomped out of the office. But it was like it got imprinted on my subconscious. So I went to where I was spending the money and I said, it's over. We're done. I'm out. Sorry. Go home. We're over. I'm out of money. I pulled myself back from a lot of my behaviors and I went back to him and I said, what was that? And he said, well, that was the I Ching. And I go, what's the I Ching? And he goes, it's a Taoist practice. And I go, what's Taoism? He said, it's one of the three sisters of Chinese thinking: Buddhism, Confucianism, and Taoism. And I said, well, what is it? Now, I had never grown up in a religious family. My folks were Eastern European immigrants, and all of my ancestors on both sides had been wiped out by either the Bolsheviks or the Nazis. And so they had, they just didn't have any belief that there could be a merciful God. And they weren't anti-religious. They just, it just wasn't something that was a conversation in our family. So now all of a sudden, he tells me about this philosophy. And I said, well, I mean, do I have to believe in God or angels or devils or stuff? And he goes, no, it's got nothing like that. Just tells you how to live. And I go, well, I'd like to know more. And so it turns out my therapist was one of the principal disciples and American representatives of a 72nd generation. Think about that for a second. 72 generations of handing wisdom down from father
Wow,
to son. 1,500 years
yeah.
of refined wisdom. He is a 72nd generation master Taoist from the Shaolin Temple, the Kung Fu Temple
I know what that is. I've heard that on a Kung Fu Panda movie before.
Yeah, right, right, right. That's what we're talking. We're talking about the Shaolin Temple here. And this guy was one of the main movers and groovers from over there. And he had this Taoist group going in Miami. And so I got involved in it. And well, it taught me how to live. And by the time it was really beginning to take hold, I would have to say that I wasn't the same human being that I was when I asked him the question, what should I do? And right about then, um, I had a little, let's say, difference of opinion with my mob clients, and we all thought it would just be better if I left Miami. So I moved to North Carolina, and when I got here, I had a fresh canvas, a fresh canvas to paint a new life on.
So how old were you when you left Miami?
Then I would be, you were talking 40.
Oh, so then it was just kind of a mutual split. It was like, well, you're not aligning with us. We don't align with you. Kind of what you're doing now. So you need to, we'll pay you out,
Well,
kind of pay you
yeah,
off
we
until you get
had
out.
Yeah, we had an agreement that I wouldn't be asked to do anything illegal or unethical because it was in their best advantage to have a respected attorney represented them,
Of course,
not a
yeah,
sleazy attorney. And
smart.
then when Johnny's son got arrested, he said to me, Bob, I know what our agreement is, but you must get my child off, and whatever you need to do, you need to do. And I said, well, I'm not going to do anything that's improper. And he says, well, you're going to need to rethink that. And that's when I said, I can't. And that's when we came to an amicable agreement that he would get somebody else that would. And I was in the unfortunate situation where a lawyer is ethically obligated to report another lawyer's unethical conduct. And so I would have had to report him even if he got somebody else. So there's just no way that I could stay there.
Makes sense. Okay. Okay. So now you're what, 12 years or 12-ish years into your law career? And then you up and move to where again did you guys
Yeah.
end up moving to?
North Carolina.
Okay, North Carolina. So now your kids are a little bit older, I assume. Okay. And so also with you mentioned it briefly, but I'm curious here. Was there anything else that came along in this world of working with the mob and being a mob lawyer? Were there any addictions or
Yes. Yes.
what
Yeah.
kind
No,
of things
I
also
was
came
I was
along in this path that you can speak of?
yeah. Yeah, I was doing I mean, in Miami, Chivas Regal, you know, the liquor Chivas Regal, the expression Chivas and Coke has a whole different concept. So yeah, so I mean, alcohol, cocaine, pain pills, and yeah, and just working all the time, coming home at 11 o'clock at night. What a good life.
Okay. And for the listeners that don't know, Chivas Regal is a premium blended Scotch whiskey from Scotland, known for its smooth, rich flavor profile. It's produced by Chivas Brothers, a company with a history dating back to the early 19th century. The brand is often associated with luxury and refinement. They have a few variants here. They have a 12-year-old. They have a 12-year-old Chivas Regal, an 18-year-old, a 25, and then they also have a Chivas Regal Mizunara, I think, but that's unique edition finish in Japanese oak casket, giving it a slight spiced and floral touch. So, sounds like it's a
But when I
very,
say
very high-end scotch.
yeah, when I say Chivas and Coke, what I mean is a lot of times people will put Chivas Regal in Coca-Cola as a drink. But when we talk about Chivas and Coke, we're talking about doing a line of cocaine and then getting all nervous and doing a shot of Chivas to calm yourself down, then getting a
That's
little.
what I
So you would keep trying to you bring yourself up and then bring yourself down and start getting a little drunk and take a line of coke to even yourself out, and you spend the whole day trying to get back to the place that you were in when you first started.
yeah,
How stupid is that?
that's but it sounds like it's so common. Like, I had another former attorney on the podcast. What was his freaking name? Was his name James? I think his name's James. Kind of a similar story here. I don't think he was working for the mob or anything, but he was actually already in North Carolina. So geographically, this is interesting, right? He was a very prominent African American lawyer, most prominent, one of the first in the state, right? And what his downfall was with the lawyer life came a lot of money, came some status, came gambling, right? Then that gambling led to drinking and other addictions within that. The hosting and the partying and the community and all the things, right? So falling into a group of enablers saying, "Oh, well, we're all doing it. It's fine. You'll be fine," kind of thing. You're doing great at work. You're crushing it. Like this is our way to relax. You're just gonna be one of the guys, kind of thing. Fell into that and then ended up robbing a bank, then going to jail, and then after he was out of the federal prison, he changed his life and now he's a minister.
Well, I think I've met this fella.
You may have. He's really really cool. He was on the podcast.
He has a
So I'd love
podcast.
Yeah, he was a guest on my show. He's
Hmm?
really cool, but I think his name is James. But okay, so during this time before going to North Carolina, when you're raising a young family in Miami through this lifestyle, did you realize kind of the things that are happening to your daughter, to your son, to your wife, and how that's impacting the family? Was that, like, on the back of your mind? Was that in there? Or did you really realize, like, "Oh, I'm making money, I'm providing, things should be things should be fine?"
Good question. I would suppose that yes, on some level, but there were so many ways to blame other people. For example, my wife's parents um, were both alcoholic. Her mom was a constant drinker, and her dad was a binge drinker. So I could blame them. I could
Yeah,
blame her.
blame the
Could
predisposition.
and then I didn't want to get engaged, and there were arguments, and it was not comfortable, and I could spend my time with people who patted me on the back and gave me another drink and enjoyed me and respected me. Can I tell you a funny story? Just a little
Of course,
funny story that's nothing to do
of
with this.
course.
You gotta go fast forward now, way fast forward. I'm in North Carolina. I retire from the law. And there's one courtroom where they deal with abused, neglected, and dependent children. And most lawyers don't want to handle those cases. And so they have a lack now of lawyers to take those cases. And so they put out a call just a couple of years ago for anybody that would like to take some of those cases. And I still have my license. I retired from trial law. And I said I'd take some. So first day that I go back to court, I run into one of the old social workers that knew me from, 4 or 5 years before. And she goes, "Hey, Bob." And I said, "Hey, how you doing?" She goes, "Are you back?" And I said, "Yeah." She goes, "How are you liking it?" And I said to her, "Well, it's nice to be able to go to some place where I get a little respect." Because, at home, you could be the biggest lawyer in the whole world, but to your wife, you're only her husband. you
Yeah,
know?
right? Doesn't matter.
It
I'm
doesn't
pretty sure
matter.
I'm pretty sure that's exactly what it's like for I'm not trying to make this political or anything, but I'm pretty sure that's exactly how Donald Trump's wife, Melania, I'm pretty sure that's exactly how she views him in, like, public. It's like, "I don't care that you're the president. I don't care that you're this dude. I don't care that you're this business dude. You're just my husband, and you're just you're just this dude. That's all you are." Like, I'm pretty sure she keeps him very, very, very humble, but
Yeah.
I'm not
Well, I
trying to
don't
get
know if that
political
was
there.
the best example. I don't know that that relationship is such a loving relationship to begin with, but
Who knows? Who knows?
we'll
We're
see.
not
But
there,
who
but
knows?
that's just one I can kinda think of just from,
Yeah.
like, the public eye
But
kind of
no, you're
sometimes.
right. You're right. Your wife is the person that will always bring you back down to earth.
Yeah, no, 100%. So, okay, anyways, back
Anyway,
to back to where we were. So, what did you notice, like, the relationships getting strained, like, while you were in the midst of all of it there in Miami and doing all the things and going to the party or not parties, but going to the social engagements and things like that and drinking and doing coke and things like that. Did you really see the strain it was causing or understand it, like, in the moment?
I generally, not in language, I knew that things were not good. But to say that I had conscious thoughts or I gave it some analysis or I actually thought about it, like, what is wrong or what is the problem and how do I solve it and how can I act in a different way that's going to make things better? Those kinds of thoughts I cannot say that I had. I knew that it was bad and I just didn't want to be part of it. I wanted to ignore it and deny it and distract myself from it. And of course, that is the worst way that you can approach it.
Yeah. But unfortunately, that's not uncommon, though. I mean,
No,
it's not uncommon at all. But at the same time, you can also not trying to justify it or anything, of course, but you're a changed man now, you're a different man. But looking back, you can still say, like, oh, well, that version of me was probably still thinking, okay, well, I don't want to acknowledge it or do it, but as long as I provide and there's money and I can, take care of everything financially, I shouldn't hear too much about it. Or I shouldn't have to do too much with this kind of thing. Like the money should be able to handle some of this. Was that some of the thinking in there? Or
yeah, I suppose I suppose, yes, there's those things like, well, you got a house and anything you want, and you have all these birthday parties, and you got a pool, and you got this, and you got that. So you should be happy,
Yeah. Dad's gonna go to work,
you
you
know?
have everything you want and need, and so if you come and ask me for something, you can have it kinda thing. It's like, trying to use the money to buy the happiness essentially,
Right.
without realizing it,
And
like,
all
you're
they
so young.
wanted, yeah, yeah. I am young.
You're young and you were super successful, like, that success coming at a young age, like, it just makes me wonder so much, like, about, like, athletes, especially, like, these college dudes who are going to college at 17, 18 years old and then getting NIL money, $2,000,000, but they don't have a lick of financial literacy coming from, some disprivileged neighborhoods. Some are coming from really nice neighborhoods, whatnot, but they don't have a lick of financial literacy if they went to any kind of school. So they don't understand it. Their parents don't understand it more than likely, and so they're just not set up for success, and then they have these multi-million dollar contracts for the NIL, and then if they're really talented and they're in the NBA a couple years later making, a rookie contract, which could be if they're a high draft pick, like in the NFL, they're making, 20, $30,000,000 all of a sudden at 21, 22 years old. They don't know how to handle that and the success and the lights and the fame and everything that comes with it. They're not taught. I think the professional sports leagues have gotten better at helping guys with it, like the veterans, the guys who went through it, Hall of Famers like that. They come back and they give back and they teach more and more and more now. And there's a more focus on it at the college level to help these dudes a little bit more gain that financial literacy a bit quicker. But man, that success can be hard and it takes you away. It's like, man, I'm successful, I'm young, I'm slick, absolutely great at what I do. That success can definitely take over, you know?
Yeah, and it's not just the athletes. I mean, even you look at the entertainment celebrities. You'll always be able to identify a couple of celebrities that don't ever seem to be much in the news. Like Kevin Costner. You never hear about Kevin
Mm-mm.
Costner doing something controversial, because somehow, he's able to separate the success that he has in the movies and all the money that he has from his family life, and that he's a human being. And there's a certain humility about, I've got this talent and I'm an actor and I'm called upon and I'm wanted and I can produce money, but I'm still just a human being. There's a certain humility that carries with him and he can handle it. And, some can, some can't.
Yeah. And it just goes back, words talk, numbers scream, and those numbers and that money can really, really talk to you and take over your life and whatnot.
Right, right,
It can be really difficult to disassociate that, and it can be really easy to use that as justification too, right? Especially for us as men, like we're taught to provide. We're taught to provide. That was kind of the whole point of digging into that a little bit. It's like we're taught provide, and you'll be fine as long as you're providing. Like you're doing great as a dad, kind of thing, right? If you give them everything they want, if they have everything they need, you're taking care of them financially, you are, the 1% of dads, right? And so it's easy to
right.
justify that. It's easy to
You know,
justify
I,
everything else.
I had a really long conversation with a friend of mine, much younger friend of mine, but had a conversation because I'm also I've got a master's in social work, and sometimes people talk to me, and this guy was really upset that his wife, who's also working, just got a pay raise and was making more than he was. Now, nothing else really changed in his life,
Yeah,
just the fact that she was making more than he was and that he couldn't think of himself as the breadwinner anymore. And he was really, really turned upside down over it. We had a long, long talk about that. But that's one of those constructs, one of those conditionings that society imposes on us men, just like on women. Women who are asked when they're children, what kind of a man do you want to marry, what kind of a marriage do you want to have, instead of what do you want to be and what do you want to do with your life. These are conditionings that start, at such young ages about what the roles are that we have to play. And then, the Marlboro Man, if you know anything about the Marlboro Man, this icon of masculinity that sits on his horse on the great field overlooking and purveying, with his fur-lined coat. These images of what it means to be a man and what it means to be a woman, they're imposed upon us and they fill our database, and so that when things happen, thoughts come up. And for us, those thoughts are the truth because we live inside of our thoughts. We think they're my thoughts, and obviously, since I thought it, they're obviously the truth. And they may not be our thoughts; they may be, the product of our conditioning. And that's where meditation and being a meditation teacher, that's where I work. That's where my work is. My work is in separating ourselves from our thoughts and realizing the truth of the statement, I have thoughts. Hey, Jay, I had a thought. Well, if I had a thought, that means I'm not my thought. It means I had a thought. And who is the I that had the thought? And so in meditation, we look at those questions. And so all of the things that you were asking me about, did I look at this and did I look at that? And was I thinking about this or was I thinking about that? If I had been meditating at the time, I would have been thinking about those things,
Yeah.
you
Yeah, no,
know?
I hear that. Yeah.
And it's a skill. It's not something that's intuitive. It's not something that you're born with. Just like going to the gym and working out. There's the right way and the wrong way to do a bicep curl. You can do a bicep curl that mostly works your shoulder, or you can do a bicep curl that mostly works your bicep. And, it's a skill to learn how to move your arm to do what you want it to do. And it's also a skill to work with your thoughts to create the kind of thinking that you want to have. But that's just another thing.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I personally don't think there's anything wrong with having those, you know, wrong feminine or strong masculine, like, role models, right? As examples, like, for our kids, right? Or to use as, like, role models and whatnot. I feel like mom and dad in the home should probably be the ultimate example of what those things are, and, be able to pass those values down and pass those through, like, sons should look to the fathers, daughters should look to their mothers, kinda thing of, for the biggest parts of those examples, right? If mom shows that she's happy in the home and in the marriage and the relationship, then that more than likely will spawn for the daughter and the sons to be like, okay, well, this is something I want too. And same for the dad. If mom and dad are both happy and they're happy in the home and they have good roles and they're equal partners, things like that, that will spawn for the next generation to want very similar things, right? But
Absolutely.
it starts at home. It has to start at home. You can't let your kids get taught by the world and taught by the state and taught by the media, right? They have to be taught at home because if they're taught outside of the home, they're going to get caught up in so many other things, right? That you probably will not agree with as a parent and that you probably don't want them learning and believing and becoming part of who they are and their central belief system or their core beliefs. And so it has to start at home. It has to set that example, first and foremost, of how great, you know, family is, how great the nuclear family can be and is for them and how they grew up and they want to, do that same thing and find that same thing and they want to find a husband that was as good as their dad. They want to find someone or have friends that treat them as good as their siblings or as good as their mom and dad, right? And that set that example, or as good as their cousins, right? Because it all starts within the family unit. So that's so, so, so important. So I just wanted to hit on that. But I also wanted to hit here, since we're getting into it now. I wanted to hit on Taoism and Daoism, which refer to the same tradition rooted in the teachings of Laozi, Lao Tzu, and his
Lao
famous
Tzu.
book,
Lao Tzu.
Lao Tzu,
Lao
and his
Tzu.
famous book, the Tao Te Ching or Tao Te Ching. The philosophy emphasizes living in harmony with the Tao or Tao, which means the way, the natural flow of the universe. It teaches balance, simplicity, and letting things unfold naturally rather than forcing control. Simple way to frame this is Taoism and Taoism are the same thing. It's just different spellings. Think of it like how color is spelled color in British English. So in America, it's spelled COLOR. In British English, it's COLUR. But the philosophy itself is all about flowing with life instead of fighting against it. So you're in your 40s now. You're in North Carolina. What were some of those next steps that led you more closer to Taoism and to practicing that and really starting to make those changes here in, like essentially the second half of your life?
Well, of course, most of the training, most of the learning came with my 6 years of study with Master Ni. Um, and like I say, so let me tell you a little bit about Taoism. Um, well, we always call Master Ni Master Ni. And one day we asked Master Ni, why do they call you Master? He was always the kind who would answer your questions with a chuckle most of the time. And he says, they call me Master because I've mastered life. And he would chuckle and walk away. So one day we grabbed him and we said, well, Master Ni, tell us really, what does mastery of life mean? And I think that what he told us at that point is probably the most succinct advice for good parenting. You master being a good parent when you find the way to interfere the least, but have the greatest impact. Interfere the least, but have the greatest impact. And what Taoism says is that there is a natural flow and a natural rhythm in life. And when you interfere with that, things don't always go so well. So it's always best to not interfere until you have to interfere. And then when you have to interfere the least that you can, but do it with the most impact. So things like timing are very important. A friend of mine once, put it this way: if you try to pick an apple before it's ripe, you're going to struggle and twist and pull and yank, and it's going to be sour. And if you wait too long, it's going to drop and rot. But if you do it just right, it comes right off the branch and it's sweet. Sometimes we human beings, we see something developing, we want to jump in and interfere with it so it doesn't develop because we see that it's developing and we jump in too quick and we don't let the lesson get learned. Sometimes we wait too long and harm occurs. So all kinds of, parenting decisions occur like that. Understand Taoism, the symbol of Taoism is that circle with the white and the black on one side,
Oh,
the
the yin
white on
yang.
the other side, the yin yang. Right.
Yeah.
Well,
My
let me
original fun fact here, since you just brought up the yin yang, the original logo of the podcast was actually a fusion yin yang symbol.
Oh, there you go.
The
Well,
very
I don't.
first logo.
Do you know that the white dot that's in the black of the yin and the black dot that's in the white of the yang are not dots, they're seeds. The seed of yin is in yang, and the seed of yang is in yin. And what that symbolizes, Jay, is that within me as a man, I have a certain amount of masculine energy, but there's also a certain amount of feminine energy. And if there wasn't, I wouldn't be able to relate to women at all. And women have a certain amount of yang energy. It's just a matter of where the balance is. The important thing is this: that the seed in yin grows and it takes over yang, and the seed in yang takes over yin. And what that's the symbol of is that day turns to night and that night turns to day, and that the natural flow of the universe is cyclical. Summer turns to winter, winter turns to summer, and that there are appropriate ways to act in each of these changes. In other words, you don't give somebody a manuscript to read at dusk when there's no light. You just, you look at the environment that's around you and you act and align yourself with it. And that's a lot harder to do for human beings than you might think it is. We all say, and the other thing is that, yeah, day turns to night, night turns to day. We all understand that. But do we all recognize that all good times always go down and turn to bad times? And all bad times always turn around and come back to be good times. And the proof of that is your own life. In your own life, there's never been a good time that's lasted your whole life. There's never been a bad time that's lasted your whole life. Not only does the universe cycle, but also the times of your life cycle. And what Taoism teaches is to have patience and to align yourself with the cycles and to act appropriately with the time. And this teaching of Taoism, and it is a skill and a study, and there are practices and there are ways to, learn about these different times and the best ways to align with them and the like. Uh, and it is just like, if you're a Christian, you say, Wednesday I go to the Bible study because I study the Bible. That's not weird about that. In Taoism, there are writings, and you study the writings, except it's not anything that's religious. It's all about how to just align with the times, and so that had a lot to do with the parenting that came up. My daughter eventually did become an anorexic. My wife did eventually become a deep alcoholic, and because of the training, that I had with Master Nee and who I became today, my boy is 43 and my daughter's 40 years old. And I have a wonderful relationship with them. They don't feel like they have to call me all the time. They don't feel like even if we don't talk for weeks on end, when we do talk, it's just like we talked yesterday. You
That's
know,
awesome.
if they need something, they don't have any hesitance to ask me. They call me for my thoughts on stuff. We chat about what's going on. I mean, I have the most wonderful relationship with them. And I think, that's just a lesson for your listeners, no matter how tough it might be. And ours was tough. No matter how tough it must be, you can always do something about it and you can always create that relationship.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. So if I had to guess and take a wild guess here, I'm guessing the wife isn't currently in the picture or left the
She is
picture.
not currently in the picture. No, we divorced, and now I have a new wife,
Lovely,
and she is a saint, and we deeply, deeply love each other, and
lovely.
we are each other's best friends.
Love that. That's lovely. I've also been through a divorce, so it's nothing I'm not comfortable to talk about. So I just wanted to ask, let me see here. So what kind of changes did you and your children make to kind of, repair those relationships as they were like teenagers and whatnot? And you guys are in North Carolina and you're going through all this. How did those relationships start to change? How did you start to fix some of those relationships and move forward with them into adulthood?
Yeah, yeah, those are hard questions because you're talking to somebody who had some real deep, problems to deal with. I mean, my son was, first of all, he had audio processing disorder. So there was a learning disability that we were dealing with. And he was the lost child because everybody else just sucked up all of the attention between the alcoholism and the anorexia. And then my wife and my daughter were deeply enmeshed. I mean, their theme song was "You and Me Against the World." Literally, I mean, literally, they used to hum that song together. You and me against the world. I mean, and they would create lies and enmeshment is a whole nother parenting issue.
That's a whole
I
nother
mean,
thing,
that
yeah,
you
and
get into
that stems from the parent to the child.
from the parent to the child because my wife, she grew up in a family again. She had two alcoholic parents, and even I remember, the scene, her mom and her used to sit in the kitchen, she tells me, and they used to talk about the bum, the father, who would sit on the couch watching TV. So this is the role model that her parents had. And then I married this woman, and that's the only way she knew how to be a mom. So she just grabbed my daughter and sucked her in. And so I had to literally fight her when we went to the divorce. I had to fight for custody of her therapy because every time she would start to make progress with her anorexia, every time she would start to make progress, she would get my wife to change therapists so that she could stay in her anorexia. And they operated
How old
together.
were the kids at the time of your guys' divorce?
Good question. Good question. Let me think. I have to figure that out.
You're fine.
When did we get divorced? So I think that it was,
Were they still, like, in high school, teenagers, it sounds like?
they were yeah, they were junior
Okay.
high, high school.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Junior high, high school. Yeah. And so the first thing, I mean, my daughter was so deeply into her illness that we had to put her into institutions where they put a feeding tube down her nose so that they could keep her alive. She got down to 56 pounds. I mean, we're talking real deep
Yeah, that's
stuff here.
really bad. Yeah, that's really bad, and
Really, really deep stuff.
it's okay that we're talking about it, you know, it's I'm not uncomfortable about it because these things are real, right?
They're real.
There's probably plenty of other dads out there that are gonna listen to this, that are gonna hear this, that also are like, "Man, you know what? I feel seen," because they're talking about a child struggling with anorexia and how difficult that is, and so if that is you, you're doing a great job. It's something that's difficult, it's something that's it's really real, these anorexia and these eating disorders, and, you know, there's multiple causes for it, but the beauty industry that we have in our country and the culture, social media culture we have and whatnot in our country can lead to a lot of these things and really destroy our girls, which is why it's so important to, you know, protect our girls, right? I have this wristband that I got recently that just made me think about this. But we I would so every year my church puts on the annual daddy daughter dance. It's been going for like 28 years or something now, and we have it at our big convention center here locally, and it's really fun. It's really fun. And every year we sign a pledge to our daughters as the whole thing. I've gone. This is the fourth year I've gone. Fourth year I've gone with my oldest child, and third year I've gone with my youngest child. We go together. I don't take them separately. We all go together. But Dad's got a wristband this year, and it's really cool. So it's based on Proverbs 30 verse 5, and it's defend, protect, shield, and strengthen. So those are the four things that, you know, we really need to be doing with our daughters, especially today. We really need to be defending them, protecting them, shielding them, and strengthening them. And that's not just like physically; that's also emotionally and spiritually, and really in all those facets. Helping them feel confident so that they don't feel like they need to fit in with the world, that they're okay being different than the rest of the world and whatnot. So I'll let you know, Dad, if this is you and you are going through this, it's okay. You're not alone. You're not the only one that does it. It can be extremely difficult to come out of. So, anyways, go ahead.
So anyway, I had to fight her in court in order to gain custody of her therapy. In other words, I needed a court order that said I am the one who controls her therapy. And her mom, so I broke the enmeshment that they had. And you know something? She started to recover within 7 months. Within 7 months, you know, I mean, we were talking of 4 years that she had been bouncing around. And within 7 months, she was
So
in recovery.
was it the mom that was changing her therapist as soon as the progress started, or was
Yes, it
it
was her mom. It was her mom.
so sad? Why would you want to
Yeah,
keep
it
your
was
child in
because they
that?
were enmeshed, because there was no boundary between her. Whatever the daughter wanted became a want of the mom. Whatever there was no separation between them. It's hard to explain what
Yeah,
this
no,
enmeshment
I gotcha.
is like, but they're literally one person. It's one person and one mind. It's like I can recall even like talking on the phone and knowing that they're both listening to the headphone. And every once in a while, the daughter would whisper to the mom what to answer me.
That's so rough. And, you know, it's sad because that's a very real thing still, right? Like,
It is.
especially in these
It is.
cases where families are split, it really can be like that to where there's a
It
control
is.
element, and it's really sad.
And so the long term, you know, end result, it's really sad, but my daughter still has a very unhelpful relationship with her mom. She feels she has to call her every day. She has to talk to her once or twice a day. And then when she comes to visit, her mom lives in Wilmington, my kids live in New York. when her mom comes to visit, they it's like there's this love hate. Yeah, I can handle you for a day, but then and mom, she's been in a couple of relationships, and mom hasn't approved, and it causes problems. And they still, but with me, with my relationship with her, it is completely, normal. I mean, I have to admit, she still has some weird eating habits. Like, we go out to the restaurant and she orders this big meal and she eats a little bit of it, and then she takes it all home and gets up at 2 o'clock in the morning and eats the rest. So she
Hey,
still has weird eating habits,
but as long
but
as she's eating right, as long as
she's
she's eating,
eating and she's
that's all you
healthy.
can ask
And
for.
she's even, I mean, she even works for QVC as a sales rep, and she goes on TV, and she drives from New York to Philadelphia to do shows. I mean, she's got a very successful, happy life. Like, she's a bit of a thrill seeker, and we have a very good relationship. But her relationship with her mom is just very unhelpful. And I hate to say it, but I think that the only way that that situation's ever going to resolve and she'll ever feel any sense of freedom from that relationship is when her mom's no longer around.
Yeah. No, that's a tough thing to swallow, but, truth is truth, and it's more than likely that'll be true because she'll kinda be set free. But that sounds like it's really impactful that you were able to see the need as her dad and be like, "You know what? You need someone to be the adult in the room and to take
Mm-hmm.
control here to actually help
Mm-hmm.
you and actually get better because I don't wanna see my daughter suffer. I don't wanna see you keep going through this. You're 56 pounds, like, you gotta get some help. We gotta get real help, and we gotta make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't want you being on the feeding tube, going to high school kinda thing, like, that doesn't bode well for social interactions kinda thing, or it doesn't give you your life either, so that's really amazing that
Yeah,
you were
yeah,
able to
yeah.
do that, and I'm sure that's where your guys' bond really repaired a lot, was you
Well,
stepping up and taking care of her.
one of the things that, I did have to work at is because of the enmeshment and because of her feeling deeply inside. Her mom had, in effect, and this is where the problem comes in I think, a lot of parental relationships. When a parent wants to be not only the mom, but the best friend, you're not the best friend. You're
No.
not your kid's best friend. You're the mom, you're the dad. You know, it's not a democracy. And the problem that you have is a lot of, and I see this happen more with women than with men, and I don't know why that occurs. But I see a lot of times when moms, they just want to, go shopping and do all kinds of, like, best friend activities with their kids. What happens is, just like you get with your friends, the child starts to be feeling responsible for their mother's happiness. The mother is now, you're my best friend, let's go shopping. No, but I wanted to go out with my other friends, and the mom is now disappointed. Now the child
Yeah,
is feeling responsible for the mom's happiness, and you just can't let that happen. Your child is not responsible for your happiness. You're responsible for your own happiness. Don't dump that on a kid. I'm sorry, but I don't mean to sound rude about that, but I feel strongly about it. And so when she would always want to take care of me, she'd always want to do something to take care of me, and I could sense it. And I would always tell her, "Hey, honey, look, you don't have to take care of me. I am totally fine. I'm good on my own. I don't need another monitor. I don't need another wife. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. You go
yeah,
on, take care of yourself. You don't need to take care of me." And that established that good boundary that we have, where she doesn't have to worry about me at all.
good.
You
No, and
know?
we should worry about our kids, and our kids, of course, are gonna worry about their parents, but not at that level to where it's like, "Are they happy? Are they doing all these things?" kinda thing. It's like, "Oh, I hope dad's doing okay. I hope he's fine. I'm sure he's fine. You don't gotta worry too much about him. Kinda does his own thing, and, I'm sure he's fine. Sure he's fine.
Hmm.
If he needs
Yeah.
anything or if something's really going on, he'll call. He'll call." Kinda thing. That's the way it should be, especially as our kids get older and whatnot. Of course,
You're right.
when they're younger and whatnot, we're gonna worry about them all the time, like, "Oh my god, did they eat their lunch today? Did they like their lunch? Are they doing okay at school? Are they making friends?" And, "Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god," all this stuff. So, and that's how it changes as they get older, and I speak with that way because of, like, the relationship I have with my dad. I'm just like, I know I haven't heard from him in a while, but I'm sure he's fine. Like, I'm not too worried about him. If there is anything he really wants to tell me or that I really need to know or really anything going on, he'll call. I know he'll call. Or if he's bored one day and he just wants to check in to see how everyone's doing, he'll call. Other than that, we'll talk when we talk kind of thing. Not a big worry. Let's see here. Anything else that you want to mention? And we've had a great conversation. Before we get into wrapping this thing up, a few questions. Do you have anything else that you want to mention about meditation or Taoism or just any practical anything in between that you want to mention from what we talked about today to
Well,
uh
I would say you mentioned the book The Tao Te Ching. It's spelled and you mentioned the T and the D. The only reason that it's spelled with the D sometimes is because in Chinese T is pronounced D, and so the Tao is pronounced Dao. And now a lot of people spell it with the D, but it's technically a T. But don't worry about that. I would suggest to most of your listeners that if they get a chance, pick up Stephen Mitchell's copy of the Tao, Tao, Te Ching, Ching, which means the classical book of the way of virtue. And it's just like a devotional. There's short little one-page tips and tricks on how to live life. To do that. And if you want to know a little bit more about meditation, a lot of people ask me, how do I get started? What is it? Is it right for me? And they ask me that. So I put all the answers down in a 40-page ebook, which I offer for free, no obligation. If you just go to my website, it says, is meditation right for me? You can just click on it and download it and learn a little bit more about meditation.
Awesome. All right, just 4 questions to wrap us up here, and then I'll close this out. These are some fun, lighthearted questions that I like to ask guests that I started bringing back a few episodes ago because I'm like, I missed those. Those are fun. First question here: does pineapple go on pizza?
No.
Perfect. You can stay. I'll publish this episode now. Second, if you could have a dinner party with 3 people, dead or alive, who would you choose?
Wow. Gandhi comes to mind first.
Ooh, that's a good one.
The Dalai Lama,
Ooh,
Abraham Lincoln.
I love that. I love that. I think I put Abraham Lincoln on at one of my tables once. On the most recent table that I created, I had Jelly Roll, I had Ken Griffey Jr., and I had Jackie Robinson at the table. Those are my 3. I think right now, if I was to pick a new 3, let's go with closer to this episode. I keep seeing stuff about it over on X, on Twitter, about Martin Luther King Jr. Let's just sit down and talk. I wanna talk to you, dude. I wanna know what actually was going on. I wanna know who you actually were. I don't wanna see it from the files. I wanna hear it from the horse's mouth. That's one person, for sure. Let's see, who else? I can only think of sports. Kobe. Kobe would be really fun. I feel like he would just be a good time, right? He would be someone that I would just, like, pick his brain on, like, fatherhood and stuff. And then 3rd one, let's go with Jordan Peterson, I think would add to this dinner party really nicely. So yeah, those are my 3. Let's go with, Jordan Peterson, Kobe, and Martin Luther King Jr. That would be interesting. Second to last question here, what is your guilty pleasure food or
Can't go with food. I'm a recovering 320 pounder.
okay, fair, respect, respect. You look great.
Thanks. I mean, I love Heath bars, but no, there is a song. There's a couple of songs. I can't think of one right now.
That's okay. We'll go with
Um,
Heath bars,
okay.
all things considered. I'm gonna say some McDonald's french fries. I will always crave those. Every time I drive by, I go, "Oh, some french fries and a Diet Coke tastes so good right now." And sometimes it's bad. I shouldn't want them as bad as I do, but I do. Very, very last question here, then I'm gonna close this out. If you could give one piece of advice to a new dad, a new young dad, age 18 to 25, he's super young, just had his first kid, doesn't even have a fully developed brain, what is one piece of advice that you would offer to him?
Learn to love yourself the way that God loves you.
That's
Learn
beautiful.
to love yourself the way that God loves you, because I mean, Jesus gave us that second commandment, love your neighbor as yourself. But if you don't love yourself, you can't love your neighbor. You have to love yourself in order to love your child.
Yeah. No, 100%. And I think a really good example of this, if you are Christian or biblical, I think a really great example of this in the Bible is the book of Ezra is really, really powerful in helping learn that, helping learn the context and helping learn kind of Ezra's teachings and whatnot. Really powerful lessons of discipleship in the book of Ezra. But then again, the whole Bible, you can get it from every disciple, every account, every parable, right?
Mhm.
One of my favorite parables here that I'll think of, and before I close and share, is the parable of the prodigal son, right? And how strong that father's love is for his son. Son said, "Give me half my inheritance. I want to go be on my own." Son goes and blows it, comes back begging, "Dad, I'll work for you. I will do anything to get back in your good graces." And the father just says, "Son, I love you. You're forgiven. Let's throw him a feast. My son's home," kind of thing. And it's just absolutely
And
beautiful testament.
you know what if I was there, I would go up into the brother's room while the party's going on, who's sitting there sulking, and I would say to him, "Yeah, how's that working out for you?" But I
Yeah.
want to tell you something interesting about that parable.
Okay.
This is going to blow your mind. That parable, along with almost all of the other parables that Jesus spoke, exists word for word in the Buddhist sutras that were written 500 years before Jesus was born.
That's interesting. It's so interesting to hear these things, to how so many of these like religious texts like intersect, right? Because it's like, man, where's all this coming from? Who is this who, and how does? It's just so interesting to learn and to compare those things.
And
I always find it interesting.
the other thing is, where was Jesus between 13 and 32? And there's a lot of evidence that he traveled in India and Tibet.
Yeah, there's a lot of evidence that he was traveling the world and doing a lot
Oops.
of things, and just yeah, it's really cool.
So
It's
just something
really
to think
cool.
about. Just something
Yeah,
to think
no,
about.
always something to think about. Well, Bob, this has been so fun. I've had fun. I don't know if you've had fun, but I've had fun during this conversation.
I've had fun.
So thank you for sharing your incredible journey and your wisdom. It's inspiring to see how mindfulness and your intentional living has not just transformed your lives, but your families and those around you as well. So intentional living can transform not just our lives, but it can transform our families and our communities and those we interact with. It's amazing. To all of our listeners, if Bob's story has resonated with you and you're curious to explore more about his mindfulness meditation, or simply want to learn more about living with purpose, you can check out his website at awiseandhappylife.com. That's a wiseandhappylife.com. There you can find resources, meditation guides, and even a free ebook to get you started on your journey. That was the ebook that was previously mentioned. So yeah, thank you guys all for tuning into the Young Dad podcast. Remember, you are worthy, you are loved, you are enough, and you are doing a great job. And until next time, bye bye.